properly will allow the best plan to come forward. But if you have a preordained set of conditions for your environmental impact report created by the person who's putting forth the program that eliminates all other proposals, I don't think that's the good process that we want to go through. Like, we want to have all of the information, all of the input, not eliminated because of someone knowing how to manipulate the system. So again, it's not a project, a particular project that I'm for or against. I'm just supportive of the system to make sure it works properly. One of the things that I became interested in actually some time ago is clean transportation. I ended up setting up innovative transportation systems to develop that, and it began a number of years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, when I was reading that General Atomics, a local company here, was using linear induction motors to launch airplanes off aircraft carriers. They could take an airplane and accelerate it from 0 to 200 miles an hour in about a second and a half, the thing weighing 86,000 pounds. So I went to them and said, why can't we use that technology to move rail cars? So that's kind of how it all began. And so I thought, using that concept, it's quite simple to adapt it to rail cars. They don't have to be new cars. They don't have to be freight cars. They can be old antique trolleys. So we thought about, there's talk about developing a tram system for Balboa Park, and I learned that John Shapery had been able to recover 3 1915 antique rail cars that were originally built by John Ziebarth, who created Balboa Park, put up the first money to make it happen, and he built these rail cars, electric street cars that would run from downtown San Diego up to Balboa Park. So I thought it might be kind of fun if those could be used, but would eliminate the electric overhead catenary wires and end up with something like this. So it's really pretty simple. Like, you can get into the technology. All we do is you take an existing railroad track, and then you start out with an electric wire on the left-hand side, and you just loop it back and forth, and you embed it in a concrete module, and it's completely sealed then. And then you just lay these modules on your track, and you can embed them just like streetcar tracks. So they're not at street level, but they're under the street. And then all you need to do is put magnets on your railroad, what they call a bogie, which is the wheel set. So you could take any bogie set and put under these antique trolleys, and you electrify sections, and you have a transportation system that is 100% clean. It's not obtrusive. There's no overhead wires. You don't have the onboard motors that are required, because the winding that's embedded on the track and the magnets make up the 2 parts of the motor. So it's a pretty elegant, very clean, easy solution. So we looked at different possibilities, and this is just an example of one thing that could be done, and this is on the west end of the track, the west end of the bridge. And an idea is, a lot of people say, well, why don't we put a parking garage in the middle of Balboa Park? That's Dr. Jacobs' plan, and John suggested, using a more advantageous location within the park. Some people feel, well, maybe what we should do is keep all the cars out of the park, and perhaps have a parking structure on each end. If you have just on the Park Boulevard side, I'm wondering if people are going to be concerned, well, let's park over on the Rio Bridge side, and all the neighbors are going to be complaining in Victorville area that all the streets are blocked. So perhaps there should be a parking structure on each side. Maybe one at Inspiration Point, maybe one over where the lawn bowling area is. It's just an example, and you can then connect by trolley. You got the little antique trolley running a loop through the park, or down. You can continue down to the Plaza down to the Oregon Pavilion. Another option, again, this is another view of utilizing the bridge for the trolley operation. Or another option would be something like this. a single trolley that just moves back and forth, so you can still have one-way vehicular traffic if you wanted to, coming into the park across the bridge, and then have the trolley in the other lane. Or another option is just use it for a tram connection. For example, you could go from the Oregon Pavilion down to other areas, or let's say it's just an example of different opportunities that could be utilized. So the benefits are basically, it gives the restored streetcar trolleys a new life. We call the system MagneRail, by the way, and in fact we're just finalizing a $7.5 million grant from the South Coast Air Quality Management District in Los Angeles and the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, because they want to use our technology to take all the freight out of the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach through the entire Los Angeles basin to Victorville using our technology. So we're just developing the first prototype right at General Atomics facility, and it'll be ready within the next 12 months. So some of the benefits, there's no ugly overhead catenary wires, which has always been a problem with streetcars. You know, people kind of look at the catenary wires and the sparks and all that as somewhat of a hazard and a danger. And trucks, booms on trucks, for example, have hit those, and people have actually been killed by it. And it could also be a little revenue-generating attraction for Balboa Park. I haven't done any numbers, but perhaps somebody wants to pay $1 to ride the trolley through the park. It could be economically viable enough to support itself. We've not done any studies in terms of economics, but I know we can put the electric motor system in for about between $5 and $10 million a mile, laying the tracks. Those numbers are known. But it's just a concept that I think should be considered as one of the tram alternatives for Balboa Park, and I think it's a fitting tribute to Mr. Spreckles to take his old original trolleys and create it for Balboa Park and actually display them in the park. So that's pretty much the concept of the land.
When can you start?
Well, you know, it's interesting because talking to different people, you know, the Metropolitan Transit Authority is trying to look at putting a trolley from downtown up to Balboa Park, coming up Park Boulevard. However, they're having a lot of challenges with the bridges and that sort of thing, with the cost. And one of the benefits of this particular technology is, unlike the trolleys or trains that are limited to a 2 or 3% grade, this technology is actually being used by the military for, you can actually use it for linear motor elevators. So it'll go straight up if you want, but going up a 10% grade or the Laurel Street Hill on a trolley would not be a problem at all using this technology. So some people are thinking, wouldn't it be nice if you could have a trolley start down at the convention center, come right straight up Fifth Avenue, all the way up here, and stop at the Laurel Street Bridge to service Balboa Park. Perhaps you could eliminate hundreds and hundreds of cars if people could just go from the convention center parking garage or the ballpark parking garage, go downtown, right into Balboa Park. Yes?
It should happen. And that was a great photo with that car in front of the California Tower Museum. It's a really great picture, but there's only one thing I have a comment about in terms of a negative, and
yes.
that is when you mentioned the lawn bowling as a place to I'm sure there's other patches all over the park.
That was just an example.
Yeah, but that example is like, what? So there's probably other patches like that are edging the park that would be perfect for that other park. But other than that,
well, perhaps what needs to be done is maybe a group put together to really, study what would be the best alternative in the park and see if there is public support for that.
Other than that, it's just like a dream, good view.
Thank you. Yes.
Question about one of these streetcars